choked it. Last man, look at that. Come on. Oh, easy, buddy.
Welcome, ladies and gents, to Bass Recon. We're going to talk about fishing rods today. We're going to talk about the types, the characteristics, and basically this is kind of for beginners who maybe wanting to get into fishing and don't understand maybe the characteristics or what they're looking for when they go look for a fishing rod, or just for an angler who needs a little bit more understanding on a lot of stuff. But it's just going to be a basic breakdown of the types of fishing rods and the characteristics of them. So we'll get right into it. So we got the two types that are primarily used in most all of fishing: spinning and casting. In your conventional fishing types, not getting into like fly fishing, ice fishing, things like that. So I live in Texas, so it's hot pretty much 2/3 of the year, so probably more than that, but get into it. So what is a spinning rod? The difference in spinning rods and casting rods. So your spinning rod is basically going to be something that looks like this. It's going to have the reel seat, which is this little piece right here. Is going to be underneath. It's not going to have a trigger on it, such as a casting rod, which looks like this. It's got this little trigger for your finger underneath there. You're going to have larger eyes or line guides. So sorry, let me move that out of the way. My wacky rig. So you have your line guides here. They're going to be larger starting here, and they get smaller as they go. Predominantly, most people use spinning rods for bass, like in bass fishing. It's a great starter, but most people use them for finesse fishing, which is like they put lighter line, lighter gear on it, and use it because it casts easy and gets the line out there pretty good. So it's gonna have a, sorry, I'm messing around in the back of the truck here. It's gonna have a hook loop right here, or some of them have it up at the top up here, so it's just kind of dependent on the manufacturers and stuff like that. So that's your spinning rod. And then your casting rod is going to be something like this. You can see that, I don't know. Move over here so you can see it. There you go. So you're going to have your bait caster sits up here. On the reel seat's going to be up on top. It's going to have a grip with the trigger, or like the little trigger grip here, which is going to be to help you hold the rod when you cast. So your line guides are going to be smaller because your line's going to be in line with the eyes coming out of the reel, as opposed to on the spinning, your line is just spooling off of a reel and it's hanging underneath, and there's a lot bigger gap between the reel and where the rod sits. So that being said, that's your two different types of fishing rods. So we're going to get into the characteristic breakdown of what a fishing pole is. So you have your grip, you have your rod seat, you have your blank or your shaft for the rod itself, you have your line guides or eyes. Then you're gonna, somewhere on the rod, you're gonna have something, and manufacturers are different in the way that they have them made up. You're gonna have some type of explanation of what the length, power, action, and things like that are, and we'll get into that just here momentarily. Most rods have, like this one, the handle actually spins to loosen the rod seat, or the reel seat, excuse me. And on most of them, you're gonna have something like this where there's a little screw. Let's see if you can hold that up there if y'all can see that. There's like a little screw piece right there that will actually allow you to turn it and loosen the reel seat so you can attach the reel. So those are just pretty basic characteristics on that whole thing. So we'll get into what the action and like the further characteristics and the breakdown of what makes up the fishing rod. So obvious, you have the length. So bass fishing poles are anywhere from 6'5" to 8 foot, depending on, heck, I've seen them down to 6 foot. So it just depends on the manufacturer, what you're looking for, you know, if you're fishing for, you know, extra light or heavy, you know, depending on what you're doing. So you have what method of fishing are you using? You know, a lot of guys get a super heavy rod if they're going to be punching through heavy, you know, matted grass and things like that, because, you know, I mean, you're going to want something that'll get those fish out of there. Extra light stuff, like you're fishing open water, maybe swim baits. I use a this is a Waterloo Hyperlight rod. It's a 7 foot medium light rod, and I use it for fishing a swim bait or a soft jerk bait or something like that. This is a great rod for that. Like, I've had great success using it that way. So, but you get in, you know, a lot of people go with, on average, about a 7 foot to 7'3" medium heavy rod, which is a great all-purpose rod to start with. So got the length, and we get into the power. Power is going to be anywhere from extra light to extra heavy, depending on what you're fishing. A lot of that stuff gets into like specialty. If you get into extra heavy, you know, you're fishing giant swim baits or some big giant baits and things like that, when you're targeting like really big fish. Then you have extra light, which is you really light, you know, tackle, really finesse small fishing, you know, like if you're fishing for, you know, the fish are really finicky and they're not biting and you need to downsize your tackle and things like that. You know, we're talking you know, drop shot rigs or small finesse Nico, or not Nico, Ned rigs and things like that. But the most commonly used, in my opinion, is medium heavy, and heavy action. Those are the most commonly used fishing rods like that I've come across. So then we get into action. So we're going to talk about your action being the fast action. So here I have a medium heavy it was a 7'3". I broke the tip, so it's probably about a 7 foot rod now, but it's been repaired and it still works really great. But it's a 7'3" medium heavy power, has an extra fast action tip, which, because I broke the tip, the action's a little different. And I mean, you can see where it's been, like, where I had to repair it. So I lost about, you know, about that much more off the tip of it. But what the action is, it's extra fast, means the bend is going to be closer to the tip of the rod. It's the flex in the rod where, you know, where it bends, and the action that you get when you're setting the hook on a fish. So you have extra fast, fast, moderate fast, moderate. You know, I'm sure there's some that I'm missing because I'm not an expert or anything, but what it is moderate, your rod's going to bend more towards the middle. Fast, your rod's going to bend a little bit further up, closer to the tip, and then extra fast is going to bend really close to the tip. And what that does is when you set that hook and you come back and you put that fish on there, when that fish is moving around and fighting, that's how fast the tip is going to respond to your to the fish moving. So You know, it's just dependent. A lot of people starting out go with a medium heavy fast action rod. It's a great starting, you know, they make them, you know, the one that I just had was a all-purpose rod that I bought from Savage Gear. It's the Battletek rod. It's awesome, you know, but I'm not, you know, a representative of the company or nothing, so I'm not getting any kickbacks or any of this stuff. I have a wide variety of fishing gear that I use, just, you know, trial and error. And sorry, the UPS truck just came by. So so we'll get into the breakdown. So that's the action. A lot of people, and this is where I have like a difference on it with what some people say, is some people will call the action the taper. And, you know, I'm not saying they're necessarily wrong or anything, but what I consider the taper and not the action is, the taper is where the rod is, the thickness, I can't even talk. The thickness of the rod down here at the base, and how it tapers off towards the tip of the rod down here at the end. So that's what I call the taper. For a lot of different rods, and I'll hold, if I can not hit the ceiling with this. So we have medium heavy rod, and then we have my heavy broomstick rod that I use for punching and such. So and this thing is super long, 7'11", I think. But if you look, you can tell, hold it up there closer, you can tell the difference in the thickness of the base of the heavy rod versus the thickness in the base of the medium heavy rod. And I'll even do you one better. My extra light, or my medium light rod versus this heavy rod, you can see the difference in the size of the rod. So this medium light tapers off slightly down to the tip, as opposed to this heavy rod, which is super thick, and then it tapers off a lot more till you get down to the end. So, and I believe it's a fast action. Yeah. So, so you're, you know, that's what I consider the taper, and just in my opinion. So, but it's changing thickness from the butt of the rod to the tip of the rod. And then the action is basically where the rod flexes when you know, set the hook and when you're fighting a fish. The power is how strong the rod is. So when you get into, you know, fighting a fish, what are your conditions? Where are you fishing at? What kind of cover and things like that are you fishing in? Are you fishing in drop or laydowns? Are you fishing in hydrilla, thick matted grass? Or are you fishing in like really sparse, thin grass or something? Are you just fishing hard rock bottom, open water, things like that? And then of course the length and stuff, and just kind of experiment with different types of stuff like that. So then moving on, we have material. So a lot of rods, they'll either say they're made out of graphite or fiberglass, but basically they're composite. They're like composed of a lot of different materials that make them strong. So it's not 100% made of graphite, because graphite's actually kind of brittle. But this one, I don't even know, let's see. I believe this one's a fiberglass rod. But you have fiberglass, you have graphite. There's a lot of different materials that go into making them. I don't know, because I don't deal in all that stuff. But breaking down, we'll just review everything. Spinning casting rods. The characteristics: you have the length, the power, the action, the taper. So when you go, you look, see if I can get this out of the way here so we can see. So you go, you look, And then on the bottom here, this is a Shimano rod. So on the bottom, you'll have some type of explanation. This one, you know, the length, 7 foot. It'll tell you like what line weight to use. You know, this says 8 to 14 pounds. And the lure weight, 1/4 to 5/8 ounce. And this one has power medium, and then your action medium fast. So this particular rod is my crankbait rod, and it is awesome for crankbaiting. So it's got really good action on it. I'd probably just need to put a reel with the lower gear ratio on there, but for right now that one's working really well. So you know, things like that. You know, every one of them's gonna be different. Shop around for whatever brand that you think you're gonna like. You know, I have several. I have 13 Fishing, Waterloo, Shimano, Savage. I have some other like little off-brand ones over here. You know, different reels, things like that on there. So fish around for what you like, and hopefully this video will help you kind of understand the makeup of the rod and what you're looking for when you go to buy one. So my advice, find something. If you're not sure, don't spend a bunch of money. I mean, these things can get expensive. I think the most expensive one I have is probably a couple $100. You know, spend about $100 maybe on it. Just, you know, make sure you get a decent one, but make sure you get something that's gonna last you a little bit and gonna work. Stick with brand name stuff. I mean, you get what you pay for, guys. Like, that's just a fact of life. You know, how many times you bought something cheap because you thought it was a good deal, and then it ends up not sticking together for a long time. Buy something that's not low end, but don't buy, you know, something high end unless you want to. You got the money to do that, do it. You know, whatever. But you know, get you a decent reel. They sell a lot of these in combos, so you can go buy a rod and reel combo, matching set or whatever. So you'll have a decent, you know, system. I mean, my girl's got, you know, several different combos and things that she's got, and then I have way more than I probably should have. But let's face it, you know, it's fishing. So that being said, you guys go out, enjoy, you know, set them hooks. So until next time, take it easy.